Good evening, my local drones. It is I, Bio Gundam, and I'm back again for another video. So today we're going to be doing a group podcast about Yahari. We have Fvlminatvs. Introduce yourself.
Hey, how's it going?
We have a member of Fool's family. Yeah, they're multiplying. Introduce yourself.
I don't know if we edit, but didn't we want to avoid the family connection?
I don't know. It's too late.
Don't worry about it. It's too late now. Just go.
All right. I'm ramblepak64.
Yes, and he'll be joining us. He's been taking notes. And last but not least, my hated rival, PlotProgressor B. How are you doing?
Wait, how am I a hated rival?
You haven't made a video in forever, so how is he a hated rival?
I'm not going to explain it. No,
because I'm still just that rival. Good. He still can't live up to my standard.
Okay. I thought your rival was Mr. Cynical.
No.
We don't talk about that.
Oh, we don't talk about that here. No more. We don't talk about that. All right. Anyway.
So
we don't want to rival him in that area.
Oregairu or Yahari, my romantic comedy, as school would sell its shit. We're going to be talking about that today. Now, for this video, we're going to be primarily talking about Season 1 and maybe a little bit of Season 2 and 3. We might be in the future making podcasts going in a bit more in depth about Season 2 and 3. But
I hope we do.
Who wants to sort of introduce what the show is about? And I need to go in a second because the cat wants to get let out. So someone...
All right.
Ball rolling.
I can.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
To summarize it as succinctly as possible, it's basically about Japanese social dynamics, particularly those in high school. If you want to get the more broad description, one character in particular, Hachiman Hikigaya, has basically given up on being social for his high school life and youth, and he's ready to just go right through, cruise through high school, not being a participant whatsoever, just doing your schoolwork, getting your grades, and then graduating. But his teacher, believing he will struggle to survive in the real adult world as long as he maintains this sort of mentality, pairs him up with another student that is also very smart, but not quite the same philosophy. Yeah. So in the end, they're part of a service club that they found, and they try to assist those on campus. And as time goes on, they not only make a good friend in Yui, they also manage to make friends in general. And the social dynamics are interesting because it turns out the characters start to grow.
Now, I do want to say though that the show sounds really stereotypical in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like it
does.
And
it's
an excuse for plot club, all that shit.
Yeah, and it's not. Yeah, go ahead, Plot. You were saying.
Yeah, I was going to say the one kind of defining thing is, I guess I would say, despite like it having like almost a stereotype character, it makes the characters feel a lot more like real people than a lot of anime shenanigans. Though the situations they're put in are a bit anime-esque, or at least like the service club aspect is probably the most anime thing about it.
Well, I don't want to say it's subversive because that term's used too much, but they do a lot to set up your expectations for it to be your typical anime teenage rom-com thing, and then they take it a different direction, usually much more grounded. And part of that is intentional.
And it's really, at the end of the day, not that much of a rom-com, really. It's more of, it's like you said, it's more about Japanese social dynamics, more so than it is really a rom-com.
That's where the localized title is very unfortunate, and I don't know whether that's determined by the distributor that got the license for it in the West, or if that's something that the Japanese company decided sounded better in English. It can go either way.
Because I do believe it meant something else.
They show it at the end of the credits. It's my teen youth romantic comedy as wrong as I expected, which fits better than my teen romantic comedy Snafu, which is what it's known as in the West, basically. Because my teen romantic comedy Snafu itself sounds like your typical teen romantic comedy title. Whereas saying, it's wrong as I expected is still towards the misleading end, but it's not as strong, because as you go through, you're like, oh, wow, it is wrong as you'd expect in more than one way.
And I think that's the interesting thing about the show, right? Like, going into it, like, even I fell for this, like, once or twice for, like, my rewatching, and, I wrote a review on it and shit, is that, like, at first glance, right, you'd think it is this kind of typical, high school thing, like, oh, yeah, the main character's, like, this bitter loner, that type of shit. But as you go into the show, you find there is a lot of depth here, and I talked to a Japanese friend of mine, and he actually said to me that, based on his experience, right, a lot of the stuff that's covered in the show, or shows like it, they are over-dramatized and exaggerations, but a lot of the stuff that happens in the show are reflections of the issues and things that do happen in Japanese high schools. And
like the concepts of like it could be a little confusing, I guess, maybe for non-Japanese viewers because this show is extremely extremely Japanese. It is extremely Japanese.
Yeah.
And it's like, if this show was to, like, if you set this show like in the United States or Canada or no, it wouldn't work. I mean, the character dynamics would be entirely different. Like some of the choices that Hachiman Hikigaya make would have completely different results in the West.
It's not unlike the Ace Attorney series in Japan, where when they first localized it as Phoenix Wright, it was stated to be located in California. But from a Western perspective, you're playing the game, you're like, nothing like this would ever happen in a court of law. This isn't accurate at all. But then it's still dramatized. It's still not fully accurate, but it's closer to what the court system is like in Japan. So, in the end, the localizers, as the series went on, were like, okay, we're just going to make this a fictitious alternate reality where there's a huge presence of Japanese citizens in California, took, similarities or whatever. But that's the thing, like, where if you don't know about Japanese culture, then you're going to play this game. And the same goes for if you're playing something like Judgment, right? From the Ryugaku Toko studios, where you'll see what they talk about in the courtroom and other stuff, and you'll be like, this isn't how it works. And it's like, but in Japan, it's a lot closer. And that's like here, and that's true in like anime and Japanese film as a whole, where a lot of times you'll be like, why is the character doing this? Why don't they just do it this way? And a lot of it comes down to the subtleties of differences in culture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, for example, if Hachiman was doing the stuff in an American high school, right? I think he'd be, like, way more fucking respected than, say, in a Japanese high school, because I think we must mention...
It depends on the high school.
Yeah, it really does. I don't think he'd be as hated as he is.
No.
In this show, he would not. But he probably wouldn't be very popular as well.
It's worse. It's worse in Japan, because it's not that he's hated, it's just that he's completely unknown and ignored at first in the show, as the show begins. And as the show develops, he gets more and more noticed, but he's deliberately trying to fly under everybody's radar, which in a Japanese context, he's essentially trying to freeze himself out. And freezing out is like one of the worst things that can be done to a Japanese student in a Japanese high school. And that's when, if you've seen the anime Another is about freezing out. And it's also a horror where people die, a la, what the hell was that show where death was stalking people? I forget what that movie was. But, it is Final Destination. Thank you. It's like Final Destination plus freezing out. And it's got those vibes. But, like,
I think we should explain that, like, very broad terms, Japan is a lot more collectivist than, say, someplace like United States or Europe that's a lot more individualist. In broad terms, very broad terms.
Yeah. And so, like, Hachiman Hikigaya is kind of like, because he's had so many bad experiences in middle school, he has kind of walled himself off and isolated himself from everybody else. He wants to fly under the radar and just get through high school. And the show actually opens up with his paper that he wrote for his one professor, his teacher. The main teacher that we're going to be seeing a lot, Hiratsuka Shizuka. And so Shizuka Sensei is one guiding force. She pops up every couple episodes to, like, usually, like, assess how Hachiman is doing and how he's going.
And course correct.
The funny thing is, try to course correct him.
Yeah, that's true. Try to.
Try to, yeah. And it's funny because as Ramble and I were watching, we've watched, like, the first season. This is the second time we watched it together. What was it? We were talking about how his teacher sees herself in him.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple points in the show, it's just like, because there's like one point where she's like, she goes into a flashback about, like, how, because she's unmarried.
Yeah.
And she goes into a flashback about how all the couples,
the camp part, it's like everyone else is, like, she's building the fire and everyone else is coupling up. And she has this, like, hatred of them, like, for a brief moment. And it's like, oh, wow, she probably understands Ikigai's experience, because she probably went through that herself, and now what is she but a 30-something teacher that is single and unmarried?
Yeah, I mean, because I think she explains it sometime, and I think this is nearing end of season 2, that she basically explains that she firmly believes that all of Hikigai's problems will eventually go away. Maybe it'll be in college or later in his life, but most of his mentality that he currently has is stuff you'll grow out of, but she doesn't want him to have to wait until he's, like,
had all these negative experiences.
until he's like
Essentially before
20,
it's too late.
25, 20.
Yeah.
And so there's this understanding that she has that she went through this.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the.
She doesn't necessarily want other people to have to, wait till they're basically close to end of college before.
Well, there's another aspect too. If we want to talk about, if we want to discuss Japanese culture a bit further, because there's also the aspect where you're kind of setting yourself up for life in school, and therefore, when you reach a certain age, it's almost like if you haven't like gotten to this point yet, then you're not going to at all.
High school is very much training for the workplace in a lot of and outside society in a lot of ways that it's not in the West.
And that's also an interesting part. And maybe this is getting too far into the weeds, but like if you read the light novels, there's a lot of Hachiman's rants actually come from stuff that he learned from his dad, who's like a wage slave at his shitty company.
Really? That's
interesting.
I tried to read one of the novels, but oh man, it's just
It reads bad, doesn't it?
Yeah, the prose is kind of. But a lot
might help if you think of it like reading a screenplay.
Experiences or views on the world. You don't really ever hear much of from his parents. They don't show up most often, but he often relates a lot of stuff to that of like business and work culture, and it's normally stuff that he's learned secondhand from his dad's basically like rants about like shitty work culture practices.
That's a shame that's left out of the show then. Because that feels like it could really help. They
mostly exist as inner monologues, and it's not like all the time, but it'll come up maybe twice a light novel. So by the end you've heard enough to where you can kind of put stuff together. And there's also a lot of emphasis drawn on the fact that like Hachiman is a unreliable narrator in his own story. So a lot of what you see him talk about, like there's a certain book where he talks about how basically a bunch of people, like his family, his friends, they all talk about how he looks miserable and moody. And he's just like, I don't understand at all why they keep saying this. I feel the same as ever.
I can see that, actually.
That's funny. Oh, wow.
No, that's the funny thing, though, because through the first, it's less of an issue as you get into the second and third season of the anime, but in the first season especially, that's part of what I think you end up realizing as it goes on, is he has these monologues throughout the show, and at first you feel like, you're getting his philosophy and this and that, but as time progresses, you start to understand some of these speeches that he has to himself are him convincing himself of a different perception than the possible reality, because, and this is like again what Full was saying, a lot of like what he experienced in middle school, now he's in a high school, most of the people don't know who he was, and rather than try and just reinvent himself, he's reinventing himself, but also to the point that he's just eliminating any possibility of making mistakes again, or what he perceives as mistakes again. Because by removing himself from other people, he never positions himself into a possibility where he could embarrass himself, humiliate himself, or by choosing to be an outcast, he takes that decision away from the rest of the classroom, from the rest of society.
Absolutely. And that's the funny thing is, it's weird because like the other thing, it reminds me a lot of Genshiken, because I've said similar things about the character Madarame in Genshiken, where this is a character that rather, when given the possibility of failure, right, he exercises the decision to fail. He exercises the decision to, like, if he's with a chick, right, and there is an uncertainty as to whether or not he can get with her, he will torpedo himself, because at least he can control at least he can control that. Yeah. Right? That's the thing, is it's like he can't control whether or not she says yes to him if he asks her out, but he can control whether or not she says no.
Well, it starts even before then, because he's so used to the identity of being a gross otaku nerd that he will intentionally do things even before those possibilities come up in order to live that label, to achieve, to be that perception, where he will make sure people see him as nothing else but the gross otaku nerd.
Yes.
talking about
this is a little bit
Genshin?
similar.
Yeah,
Genshin.
yeah.
Because
We're digressing a tad bit.
Yeah, because I was going to say,
Yeah.
Hachiman in his story is that, I mean, he talks about when he was in middle school briefly, that he had a phase where he was like really big into Japanese historical culture and very much that Shinibyo light novel-like way. And
him and Zymokuza.
It's
him and
the way he
together.
describes it. He had about like a year to a year and a half period where I guess it was because he was paired up with Zymokuza that he kind of grew into that label, and then he just now looks back on it with utter embarrassment, like a lot of people do. But
I mean, that was one of the interesting things I pointed out to.
I have no regrets. I have no regrets from reciting lines from Monty Python's Holy Grail and charging the new residence hall with my friends and running away.
I regret it.
I have no regrets.
First of all,
No regrets.
And the Holy Grail is still classic. Why would anyone be ashamed of that? But
It's classic.
That was something that I observed though with Full was Hachiman, and that's the thing. Like for all of the for what little I know of a lot of these shows, like Hachiman is not really an otaku himself.
No.
Which I think actually helps make it more relatable outside of that, because that's the thing. Like I'm not very familiar with this subgenre of the teen romantic comedy anime kind of a thing. The closest I have is the anime Gamers, which protagonist is a gaming otaku.
Weren't you watching Love is Hard for Otaku? Wotakoi?
Wotakoi, I read that. Well, that's different. That is, of course, Otaku as the protagonist, but that's comfy. I wouldn't even call that like romantic comedy. Like that's very different because the characters start dating within the first volume. And at that point, it's about being in a relationship. It's not actually about because that's the thing. Like Gamers feels like what you'd expect this show to be, because Gamers is just a love trapezoid rhombus. I don't know. It's beyond love triangle. That's for sure. It's a bunch of dumb idiots that are stupid for each other but don't realize it and keep making mistakes, and shenanigans ensue. And that's what I think, this show is the Trojan horse disguised to make people think it's that. Only, oh crap, no, we're actually getting to some real deep human sociology and psychology here, and it turns out things aren't always funny or comfortable.
I do want to point out too that there's something. It's a shame Lone Crit isn't here, but one of the things I said in conversation with Bio and Lone Crit a couple weeks ago was there are no waifus in the show.
No.
You had me write that down.
Yeah, I had you write that down too. There are no waifus in the show.
I don't know if I quite agree, but
no, because a waifu is an ideal dude. They're perfect in some way.
Oh,
and
okay.
None of the,
if that's how you're describing, yeah.
Yeah, in none of the when I think of waifus, and it's oh yeah, would I ask the teacher out? Absolutely.
I'm saying, I got a bed. I'm a hot teacher.
Da, 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 da. Yeah, absolutely. It was get some Van Halen in here. But anyway, absolutely. But that's the thing is, none of the girls in here are really waifus. And I know some people are going to get their, hackles up. But, no, the psychology of these characters... The only other show that I can think of where the character psychology is so well realized and so consistent and so thoroughly developed is the original Neon Genesis Evangelion. That's the only other anime I can think of where the character's psychology is just that thoroughly realized and developed. And this show, and
to add to your point, because I think. Because that's the thing, even waifus have quote-unquote flaws, but it's oh, she's actually not a good cook, or oh, she's a bit of a klutz. Here, you dive into real character flaws here.
Oh yeah,
even and granted, it's and yeah. Well, I was going to say, you get more into it later, but Yui has herself deep character flaws.
To bring that up, that's actually one of the funny things. The first arc, I had only watched season 1, maybe not 2, but I'd only watched season 1 when I was first talking to Plot about the show. And I said I absolutely hated Yui Gahama Yui. I hated her. And now I don't feel that way about her. I don't hate her.
Can we stop a quick moment? You guys got the light novel. Bio, you said you had the light novel.
Yeah.
What is the light novel author's pen name?
Let me go look that up right
It starts with a W. It's like Wata something.
It is
Watanari.
Yeah.
And I just want to laugh at that because all of his characters have these Stan Lee style alliterative names that no one would in real life. Well, okay, I don't say no one in real life would have. This people,
Yukino Shita Yukino,
like nobody in real life would have names this many names. Like you would not have a classroom of this many names like this.
Yeah,
right.
No, you would not.
It's absolutely
Hayama
ridiculous.
Hayato, Kawasaki Saki. What was the class? The class president's name? Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Because it was like Shiro something, and then the same thing repeated again. I mean, it was Shiro Meguri. No. Shiro Meguri. It is like he just like it's like this guy has some Stan Lee naming conventions going on. Something serious.
I wonder if part of it is so he can remember them more easily. He doesn't always need a notepad.
Yeah,
but that's the thing. Like it actually does. Like you might, if you haven't watched a show in a year, you might forget some of the names. But it's easy to just get right back into them once you hear that kind of full naming scheme because it actually does help.
Let's see, what was it? Hayama.
Hayama Hayato. Yeah. Like it's when you start getting it the teacher, Hirotsuka Shizuka, Uka. Like, hers is like the weakest, but like,
Hers sounds the closest to a real name.
Kawasaki Saki. Like,
that's
really, bro. Or Shiro Meguri. Yeah, like Hachiman Hikigaya, Yui Gahama Yui, and Yukino Shita Yukino. Like, really, like this is like what was it? We could just go through like Stan Lee names like Peter Parker, like like the alliteration that's there is just hysterical. I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, go kind of what were we talking about before that? Before you mentioned
talking about like Japanese society
brilliant
and
that's
stuff.
way back. That's rewinding to the beginning.
Yeah, we want. Yeah, but
we should talk about the three aspects that pop up in this show quite a bit. And if you are watching this show and you're like really kind of confused, there's three things that people should know to make sense of this. Actually four. There's the concepts of wa, which is harmony, which is where you get the collectivism, and that's the thing is like everybody needs to get along. And actually, this is something that the teacher says in the beginning of the arc where they're at the camp, the summer camp. She says like you don't have to like these people, even be friends with them, but you do have to get along with them well enough to just survive, right? And it's like
and going into that, like rocking the boat or conflict is not looked upon in Japan. I think Phil, you can talk a little bit about
that. And like that's again, I said before, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. But
I was talking about like in Japan, like conflict tends to be avoided. If there is a conflict, they go through like a third party, unlike in the West where it's
that whole thing. Yeah, and like I was saying, I was talking to you in Lone Crit, where I'm from. It was me and Ramblepak are from the Northeast. And if you we would consider this somebody like being a real prick, I guess you could say, like because in Japan it's actually and some other
you don't talk behind someone's back. You don't talk behind someone's back. Basically.
You don't talk, but like in Japan or Korea or whatever, having a third part, talking to a third party, right, and having the third party go and run interference, like. For example, if I'm at a workplace and I'm in Japan and I'm at a workplace and I'm doing something that is hindering or upsetting or pissing off somebody else, a third party, then that third party is going to go to, say, a friend of mine or a boss or somebody, and that person is going to come to me and they're going to say, hey, fool, maybe you should stop doing this because this and that. And the idea is that they'll usually do it right at the end of the day before I go home because I can't have a confrontation. Like, they don't want conflict. I can't like generate, like, if this is like where me, the Northeast, I'm gonna find that person and be like, yo, why'd you go to the boss instead of talk to me? What's the problem? Like, you can't face me, but in Japan, you don't want that conflict. You want to avoid that conflict because that disturbs harmony.
There's also an alternative here where in America where if two people are going to one middleman or middlewoman or whatever, most of what the time that I've run into is that person in the middle is like really early on, like, look, I ain't picking sides. You two got to hash it out. Stop talking to me.
Exactly.
So and I was gonna say, so like I work at a Japanese company, and I've heard stories because we have people like, even though I'm in America, we have people that come and do what they call tours in America, where they're supposed to come and visit the American side of their business sector for like 2 to 3 years before they go back to Japan.
Oh,
It's normally a fast track for them to get promotions in Japan, because apparently it's really hard to get promotions in Japan. But there are stories I've heard about. There were people who caused disturbances or did really bad at their work, and they wouldn't get fired, but they would, when their tour ended, rather than like get promoted, they still wouldn't fire them, but they would either put their desk in a weird location or slowly move their desk further and further away from other people in the hopes that the person will just get tired of working there and leave, because they don't
it's so funny.
The idea.
It's so funny that we bring this up because there, as we say, like there's a lot of this stuff actually being tackled in surprisingly numerous spaces in the Japanese media space. It's always exaggerated.
I should mention that the stuff we're talking about, like, it is getting fixed slowly, but this is a very slow process.
No, it's not even just that. Like, it's like because like everything that Plot just described there about they either put their desks somewhere weird or they move them further and further away. That kind of stuff. Like the last season of Agretsuko had that, where you don't fire someone, but you do what you can to encourage them that they want to resign effectively.
You make their job.
So the guy I'd heard about, he went back to Japan. He got the promotion he was supposed to get from doing it, but they put his desk basically in what used to be a former broom closet.
Oh my god, that's so Office Space.
Yeah, but
it's not even just that. It's
did they take a swing line too? Did they take a swing line stapler too?
But he essentially put there, and he apparently worked there for all of about 3 to 4 months after he came back before he got tired of just being completely cut off and isolated, and then quit.
My goodness.
And
that's the thing, though. Again, what you said is they cut off and isolated. That is like one of the biggest causes of because I got a couple books on this I've read about hikikomori, and which is the people who are shut-ins, and they just kind of like hide in their apartments or their rooms. And I remember reading a story by Haruki Murakami. It's in The Elephant Vanishes, the collection of stories. Elephant. I'm typing it in right now because I don't remember the name of the story. And The Elephant Vanishes. Let's see. It's a Haruki Murakami story. I'm looking through the different titles and I don't recognize any of the titles. But there is a story about a guy who gets frozen out because he's blamed for bullying somebody that committed suicide. That actually, the culprit who actually bullied the student to suicide turned around and blamed the main character of the story. So the main character ended up getting frozen out through like a lot of school, and he held this grudge, and that's like one of the things that really sticks to me about that. But like freezing out is basically, again, it's like when everybody ignores you, and like that's one of the worst things that can happen to somebody. And in Japan, and it is just even this is the thing that people don't realize is even the teachers will go with the flow. Even the teachers and the principal of the school will go with the flow, and they will use the excuse like, well, we want the kids to work this out on their own. But here's the funny thing: if the kid just stops coming to school, they consider the problem resolved. And that's the funny thing. Like, and the kid becomes a hikikomori, and sometimes this happens in like early as middle school, where the student just stops going to school, and it's not like it's very difficult to transfer schools in Japan, and try to make a fresh start, unless you're moving. Like, if you're moving, that's one thing, but like if you're not moving and you're staying put, it's nobody really seems to transfer schools. That's the thing. It's like there's so much emphasis in Japanese society on being social, on having a community you're part of, because it's weird, because like having been something of an outcast in grade school and middle school, when I was younger, high school it was different, but like having been something of an outcast, like if I was just frozen out, I would have, if people just started ignoring me, I would have thought that was fucking great, fantastic. I would have thought that was perfect. But in Japan, that's actually worse. That is the worst form of bullying you can give somebody, is to completely socially isolate them and just not even acknowledge they exist.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like, if anyone who's experienced like group project, every time I remember when I was in middle school and high school, group projects are the most nerve-wracking thing, because when the kids are allowed to choose who they want to group up with, it suddenly becomes this thing of you have to figure out if you're like, can I find someone to group up with before the teacher has to force someone to group up with?
Yeah,
it only works if you happen to be like me and I was largely an outcast with like one friend when I was in most of elementary school, and then through the first part of middle school. So there were very few instances we were actually in the same class together, and that was the only time we were like, yes, you, like we knew exactly who to group up with. But under most circumstances, it's like I knew I was the guy. It's that stereotype of like the sports, picking the person on the team. You're the last one. You're the person nobody wants to have there, unless you get good grades in that subject, and then they're going to push all the work onto you.
Yeah, and then you moved.
And then I moved, and it was very, very weird.
Very different.
Dude, sports is the other thing, and that's the funny thing, is how quick you realize like sports are a popularity contest.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, is like
as someone who is never bad at sports, but you still always get chose like close to last just because people don't know you. That's
that when you're actually good at hockey though. Or pretty decent at hockey, but then all of a sudden, like, it's floor hockey, and you get chosen last, and whoever chose you last was like, man, I'm so glad I chose full. But like, anyway,
like Hachiman being chosen for tennis.
Yeah, I know, Hachiman being chosen for tennis, exactly. Like, thank you for bringing it back. Thank you for bringing it back, because I don't know if let's talk a little bit more about some of the different characters before we go into spoiler territory.
Before we get into that, like, we're talking about why.
The other concepts, I said 4 concepts, and I just started with
You started with why, yeah.
Giri is the other one. Giri is duty or obligation.
And that's
that
because 2 of the girls in the show actually technically owe Hachiman Giri.
Well, don't want to go spoilers yet, but there are characters that could be perceived as one. It seems they paid it off. The other may have obligation or giddy towards Hachiman, and that's what he focuses on. We'll probably talk about that more during the spoiler section.
Yeah.
I don't want to give anything away. But giddy is a big one. Giddy and obligation. And that's huge to the Japanese. I mean, the idea of obligation and debt that you might have to somebody. I'm not talking financial, but like if somebody did something for you, they bailed you out, they saved you, they did something for you. You owe them now,
like a samurai,
and
right?
that's
the samurai saves your life, and now you're life debtor to the samurai to like repay that, because you owe him. If it wasn't for the samurai, like as an
sort of,
you'd be dead.
Yeah.
Another example that you could see it in action is in Densha Otoko, the train man, where he helps her from a pervert accosting her, and so she wants to give a gift back, and the manner in which she does it is like, wait, is this seriously just a giddy gift, or is it a real gift, like a more meaningful gift? And that's part of the example.
And
it's like
him realizing that Yeah, in the show is that Hachiman is very kind of upset when he realizes that he thinks that Yukihama is only,
God, spoilers!
Exactly.
How is
Spoilers! You're giving it
that
away.
that's still season 1?
Yeah, it's season
Because that's what
one.
we're talking about right now, or at least that's our primary focus right now.
Well,
I thought
I'm assuming people haven't watched the show at all yet, But
Well,
all right, go ahead, fire. Yui Yui. Go ahead. She owes him.
Yeah, because about right near the middle of the season, he finds out that Yukihama or Yui, I'm just gonna say Yui, was the owner of the dog that he prevented from getting hit by a car that also caused him to break his arm, and
miss some of the first days of school, which is also where he basically decided, I missed my chance to make new connections. I'm going to outcast myself, and it's going to be so much easier.
Yeah, and so to a certain extent, he feels, or he thought, or maybe she did, I don't know how, it's impossible to tell how much of it is what in the show, nor do they really care, because that's not really the point in reality, other than Hachiman's perception of it, that she was trying to be around him as like an owed amount of respect toward, or of interaction with him, because she is the reason he got frozen out, I guess you could say. And he says that, like,
more like she's the reason, like her dog ran across the street, he saved her dog, and then because it's not, I wouldn't say that she feels giddy or obligation, or that she owes Hachiman because he rescued the dog.
Yeah,
but his speech shows, one is fucking boss. It is his speech where what is it? Right after
it's the nice girl.
Right after they find out what's going on with what's her name, Saki or Kawasaki. Like right after that, like I kind of just like found it. Hold on, they go to the workplace visit.
Yeah, because there was the workplace visit stuff, which is was that after the Saki stuff?
And then it was right after the Saki stuff. And then she tries to talk to him a little bit. And let me see. Hold on, I'm looking at the subtitles.
He gives the whole nice girl speech, which
I
looked up a few times. A lot of people really love this speech, and I think
it's right. He's not wrong.
Not entirely, and that's where a lot of his unreliable narrator portion comes in. There is truth in a lot of what he says, but it's
a perception.
It's the conclusions he'll often come to. Like he takes his observations of certain things that are accurate. He's correct that a lot of times and it's right in that first episode. He mentions it to Yui when they're trying to help her learn how to make cookies, right? Mm-hmm. And he says right there, it's like a guy is going to see that you gave handmade cookies, and he's just going to appreciate that, and he's going to just start jumping to conclusions, and that's the thing. He's talking about why he hates nice girls, because he's talking about how he interprets any kind thing a girl, it's his interpretation, and it's something that a lot of guys share too. But he's basically saying, you're going to sit there and you're going to overthink it, and you're going to think it's special, and she does it for anyone. And that is where, again, you're starting to learn he's an unreliable narrator, because it shouldn't take too much thought to realize he's wrong in this instance, because he's wrong about Yui being this person, but this is also part of where he's protecting himself. It should be obvious that Yui is not being kind just out of obligation, and she's definitely not treating him like she
I disagree. Well, one, she is treating him different from other people, because
and a great example of that is the scene where she's like dressing up as like that sexy devil, and she's like, "Oh, Hachiman, how do I look?" And
she wants attention.
That's actually later.
That's later. But she wants. That's when she wants
near
attention.
The end of the first season.
That's a little later. The second half of the half.
What Hachiman inadvertently does is he totally kicks game, and he's not trying to, but he's kicking game, because what is he doing? He's not responding. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. He's
sorry. I love Plot's reaction.
Yeah, all right. He pulls out his Sigma male grind set instead of being receptive to the.
I'm going to play the middleman. I'm going to play the middleman. I'm going to play the middleman. I'm going to play the middleman because I know a lot of Gold's perspective, and I know where you're going. And also because I've done the unintentionally kicked game, quote unquote, myself.
Oh yeah, at the convention with the girl that dressed up like Harris. Yeah.
Okay, so both.
The thing is, what he does is, even though he hurts her, there is that separation created. And I've spoken with a lot of people, whether they believe in game or not. One of the things that you can do, I don't want to say you can do, but there is an effect of that, separation. Like it could either be a curse or it could be the blessing that brings things together. And that's the most. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but by Hachiman doing what he does. He threatens things. But granted, again, we're talking about Japanese culture. He's still part of the classroom. It's going to be different than it might be interpreted in Western culture regardless, right? Who knows how she would respond if she were a British, European, American, Canadian girl. It might be different how she responded than from how Yui responded in this very Japanese show. But the point is, now there's an absence for both of them in a lot of ways to ruminate on the lack of the other's presence. He's too busy trying to protect himself, though. Yeah. That's the big difference.
I mean, the part earlier where I said, like, in the light novels, where you have, like, I think it's like a 4 or 5 chapter section. Maybe it was actually like a small in-between story where it's like a volume like 6.5 or whatever. Yeah. It's people trying to cheer him up because they think he looks miserable. It's actually in between that kind of area, I believe, if I remember right.
That actually would be.
And they just didn't animate that.
I also want to say, did you ever hit we talked about WoW, we talked about Giri. Before we talk about some of the other characters, because I did at least want to talk about Kawasaki Saki, and how through her you could see stuff with the character. So
but go ahead. The other two were Hone and Tatemai. And Tatemai is your outward mask, right? And this is actually something that all cultures have. But in Japan and in a lot of ways in East Asian culture, it's a lot stronger. Everybody wears a mask.
Yes.
Yeah. Persona. You have outward. You have your outward persona. Everybody has that, right? Where you in Japan though, it's a lot more pronounced than it is, say, in American culture, or at least where I'm from, where you keep a lot of your own personal thoughts and ideas and opinions to yourself, and you conform to wa. You want to avoid conflict, so you conform to harmony. You conform to what the overall opinion of everybody is, and kind of fit in with that. And then there's Hone, and Hone is only really the true self, your true persona, your true personality, and that's the person that you let, by and large, only your close friends really get to know you by. And what we have is, if you're actually paying attention with the show through the seasons, you can start seeing Hone between, say, for example, Yukino and Hachiman start to fade. And it starts... It starts going away in season 1. Starts. It doesn't completely go away, but they start going towards Hone.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
his go ahead.
Well, that's season 2, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah, we don't want to do
stop.
too much spoilers yet. Yeah, we don't want to do too many spoilers yet.
Go back to what you were saying.
Yeah. Hachiman's whole, like, where the funny thing is, what's kind of brilliant about him is he's incorporated his own self-deprecation into Tatemai. And it is designed to be off-putting. It's designed to make everyone around him uncomfortable. And it does. It works. It makes everybody around him uncomfortable. They'll default to kind of like, wow, that's kind of creepy and gross. But a lot of this is because people in that situation won't know how to respond in Japan. Self-deprecating humor, and I actually experienced this myself. I have a penchant for self-deprecating humor to a degree. And I just see it as a joke, because these are things I don't think are really important. But when I was going and frequenting this one Japanese language exchange, like, somebody told me, like, you're actually weirding people out. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, well, self-deprecating humor comes off really differently to the Japanese than it does to us.
I mean, I can say it even weirds out people in America. I mean, to the
depends on where you are.
It depends how often you do it.
Well, that's the thing, is how often you do it. It's
how often you do it, yeah.
And how you do it, too, because sometimes people will just take certain things as like, oh, wow, it's like, you went dark, bro. And
yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah, that's true. If you go
But no, it is different where it's like, because there's at least a degree of normalization of self-deprecating humor to an extent in America. But I want to jump around to, before we get into spoilers, some of the light discussion on the other side characters as an illustration of how a lot of ideas regarding the social dynamics are handled. For example, like we see Hachiman's whole goal of dealing with the social dynamics is to just not be, keep himself out, like lock himself out.
Yeah.
Yui tries to basically be Wa. She tries to make sure she gets along with everyone, but she doesn't always know how to assert herself.
Yeah.
Yukino Shita understands, and that's the funny thing. Like for all of his mistakes, Hachiman did figure out social dynamics and how people think and what they will do to protect their status within the social group. Yukino has also figured that sort of thing out herself, but from a very different perspective because she's still involved, and partially because considering her goals, she has to be involved. It's in basically, living with the difficulties of the social group, where she's going to be encouraged to be ostracized and hated because of who she is. Now, then you have Kawasaki Saki is probably one of the characters given the least amount of arc or depth, I guess, in the show throughout its entire run. But what's interesting about her, you're laughing.
So I was reminded that you say at least the interesting thing is that her in the light novel, Hachiman often greatly refers to her as that Kawasaki something because he can never remember her name correctly. It's like
excellent.
34 syllable of her name.
He's like Kawa something.
Oh my goodness, that's magical.
That happens throughout the show. Everybody's always messing up. I mean, what is it?
Well, they're always messing up his name.
Hikitani. Yeah, they keep calling him Hikitani.
But I don't think they have them do it for other characters. But no, for Saki though, she's just got like she's actually matured because she's sort of had to because of her own dynamics.
Yeah.
With her family, but she's basically like she's not an outcast, but she doesn't shut herself out. It's just that she doesn't have time for it. Well, she exists, but I'm saying like from her perspective, she just doesn't have time for all the high school social drama, so she doesn't partake because she's got other stuff on her mind, other stuff occupying her. And so
in a sense, go ahead. Keep going.
I was just going to say, it's like, so that's part of what makes her interesting in her regards to how she deals with it, because then some of the other characters have their own way. Like Ebina is sort of, Ebina's like Madarame, right? Ebina's like Madarame, where in order to kind of protect herself, she just decides to be off-putting.
As gross as possible.
Well, gross given the standards.
Well, I mean, from their
label and stuff.
How they're gonna react to her. Yeah,
but that's the thing. I mean, she's like, as I said, like Madarame, and that's the thing. Like, you see people dealing with these different social dynamics, and even Hachiman's younger sister. She has the same kind of social insight that he does. Only she knows she's cute, firstly, so she can get away with stuff he can't.
That's literally shown in the show,
she doesn't
too.
hate people?
That is actually literally shown in season 1, where like she does a little like Nyan Cat thing where she sticks her tongue out and like puts her fist on her head and top of her head and everything, and then like Hachiman
tries it with his teacher and she punches him in the gut.
Fucking knocks him out. Yeah, that's like she can get away with it. He can't because she's cute. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, and that's where what's interesting then is where you have, and again, like some of it is just what they have time to dive into. Like Hayama is one that tries to solve problems, but he tries to solve problems by making everyone get along. The problem is, as we see in the camp arc, a lot of the pressure goes to the person being ostracized instead of the people that are causing that person to be ostracized to begin with. He doesn't actually, he only knows what works for him. He doesn't know what actually needs to be done, nor does he have the guts to do what needs to be done most of the time. But that's the thing, like the girl crushing on him, she's a perfect example of the person that causes the kind of chaos in these social dynamics.
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't solve anything.
Yumiko.
She doesn't solve anything. She only causes problems most of the time.
Yeah,
and
like
the thing is,
she's like at the camp where she tries to walk up on Yukiko and she's trying to start shit, and then Yukiko like just doubles back on her and she's like backs off.
Well, no, actually, that during the camp scene, like her and Yukino got in an argument. It's when Hachiman comes comes out of the bungalow and sees Yukino staring up at the sky, and he's like, they get into a conversation. He's like, "What's up?" She's like, "Yeah, I got in an argument with Miura Yumiko, and she
started crying.
She started crying, and it's like I didn't know how to handle that, so I just came outside." It's like I refuted all of her arguments until she burst into tears, and it's like, well, I mean, you're made of ice, but at the same time, she is kind of an ice queen, but like she's also like doesn't get other people like, and that's the thing is Yumiko, she'll just sit there and so psychoanalyze the hell out of her in public and just bear all of her insecurities and never realize that Yumiko is the way she is because of her insecurities. Like Yumiko acts she fakes it. The idea is, you ever hear this phrase, you fake it till you make it. Yeah. She's the kind of person who maybe growing up she was a little bit plain. She decided she was going to be hot shit in high school, so she got, she dyed her hair and she did all this stuff, and now she's acting like she's the hot chick in class. And guess what? She also gets to be friends with the rich hot guy, Hayama Hayato, and be part of his inner circle. And he's the most popular dude in school. And, that means she's part of the popular crowd. And the funny thing is, like, whether or not, this is actually one thing that's true, universally. If you're part of the popular crowd and you had to like work to get in there, your position there is always in danger. Yeah, it is always in danger, at least in your own head.
I mean, they further illustrate this because I know that, like, what's the name of the character you're talking about?
Yumiko. The blonde.
She does fall into the category of where she's been historically more popular than a lot of people, but not necessarily like the top.
Yeah.
And this comes into prevalence later with one character in season 2, but also the person at the very end of season 1 that's supposed to help lead the school festival is that a lot of that character going for like president of the festival committee and the volunteering is in this effort of hopefully garnering
Sagami. That's
popularity.
And
she's
popularity,
trying to get kind of a queen bee status,
and everything she does throughout it is to gain this queen bee status. And what you kind of I think throughout the entire light novel series, she is actually portrayed as like the worst person.
Sagami is really
because
it's a shame because after that arc, she just kind of drops off the face of the earth.
Oh yeah, but because even like Yumiko gets partial amounts of like character development in the later parts of the series, though it's not much.
Yeah,
but like Sagami is forever just like viewed as this person who is just a really shitty social climber.
Yeah,
that eventually and that's kind of why Hachiman's interactions at the end of the series, it's like the kind of interaction where she disappears and she tries to do it for attention.
When she goes,
a lot of why why she's hiding is because of how bad her social climbing is basically coming about.
Yeah.
But
we'll have to jump back around to that once we get into spoilers, which I think we should be getting close to.
Yeah.
I know because it's not really spoilers so much, but I did want to talk a bit about myself, some of the more technical stuff and how they did the show, which is the direction of it and the animation of it. Because from my perspective, this, like, I've seen people that prefer the character designs of this season, and some people that even said, like, I want to see what it would look like if seasons 2 and 3 were animated by the same studio. Because this first season was a different studio than the next 2 seasons.
Yeah.
This studio feels bad.
Well, here's the thing. I don't want to say it's so bad, but it's also not very good. But this feels like animation by a studio that they like anime, but they don't necessarily care about animation. Versus seasons 2 and 3, where the studio clearly cares about animation. If that makes sense, because I realize as I'm watching the season this time, the first season, where there's so many still shots, which are kind of normal and expected for a lot of anime. So it's like the one tennis match. It's just lots of still shots, not actual motion action. And then there's when they announced the beginning of the festival, and all the stage action is like either sloppily animated or it's still shots. And then you get to the final performance, which is not very good looking, and just like 2 or 3 minutes of animation that is like half of that animation is repeated. And especially going back and watching a bunch of Ashita no Jo 2, which is a 1980 anime.
Yeah.
And seeing how a lot of the fight scenes and fight animations are not recycled and are still like they barely use still shots in comparison. But at the same time, when you watch this show, you know where a lot of the effort really goes. Stuff like Ebuna's Fujoshi Freakouts.
That's the weird thing. Yeah, this sakuga of this season is in where like the wrong places where you would think it's like stereotypically, oh, this is what's the really important part of the show, and it's like,
but it's like,
bro,
what
did you read the light novel?
Well, that's the thing. What did the team themselves expect? And it does make me wonder, because that bonus episode at the very end, which feels so out of place, was evidently written by or had writing credit to the light novel author, but that feels so much more like what they expected the show to be.
The sports festival one.
The ending sports festival, where it's just, this is your average, anime teen romantic comedy in high school thing. It doesn't belong, and all the characters feel like they regressed actually from where that's the season actually ends.
You should see the season 1 OVA. But
I thought that was the OVA.
No, that was actually not the OVA. I actually found the OVA, but anyway, go ahead.
Oh my goodness!
No, the OVA is just, it's actually better animated, but it's Hachiman's sister, what's her name? Kohari? Komachi. That's it. Yes. Komachi puts on, she helps out the service club in putting on, because they have to write articles for a magazine, right? A wedding magazine. So she puts on a who would be the number one bride contest between Yui Yukino herself and the teacher, Shizuka. And of course, Shizuka wins, because if Shizuka doesn't win, she's going to kill somebody. But the funny thing is, like, when they go over, like, Komachi actually has a little thingy where, like, she talks, they do a perfect husband profile. And her perfect husband, it turns out, would be her brother. And actually, that is actually...
So, for the guys that read the light novel, does this episode have any grounding in the light novels, or was it just...
No,
okay.
I don't think
it did.
I
don't think it did. Yeah,
I just want to make sure, because as I said, like, I expected the animation team, the studio, to have written that bonus episode, and no, it was written by the light novel authors. So.
It's either like an aside story thing, or something that the author wrote specifically for the anime, or something they wrote specifically for the anime. So I think it might be the later.
I mean, like, in the light novels, him and Komachi have lots of jokes. It's almost like an inside joke of them making fun of a trashy anime.
And
was it Siscon?
There's a couple like lines out of it
where they like to make fun of it.
The funny thing is, like, there are actually several points, like or Digimon did this, because there was a brother sister characters in Digimon.
Kind of poke the bear.
The thing is, it's like, it's not okay. I do want to say it's absolutely non-sexual. But there is this weird thing where it seems in Japan, sisters should probably try to find guys like their brothers and marry them. This is just something I've just kind of picked up on that's like weird. And if you like, the episode actually sets it up. Komachi makes breakfast for herself and Hachiman, and the whole episode, it's like, they have a sort of weird ass husband and wife kind of relationship, but it's non-sexual. So wait a second. It's almost like trading for getting married in Japan, and like, what do you call a man who never has sex? A husband. That makes sense. Perfect sense. It's like, anyway, go ahead. Somebody else. That just flamed. That did not land. That did not land.
But no, a lot of their interactions
crashed and burned, and you crashed into an orphanage.
Yeah.
All right, we can stop now.
No, we're
but there's like the inside jokes, and like, as Komachi likes to make jokes saying like, I bet I earned a lot of points for that.
Like, they're all basically like they're trying to compete with like, who's a good sibling kind of a thing, and she's always like, oh, oh, I bet I earned a lot of points. And every time he tries it, she's like, nah, not really.
No, not really. And she knows she's cute, so she can get away with it.
Exactly.
And so they like to make jokes, and then there are other people in there that they comment because he's such a recluse, or he as we've brought up before, he tries his to in his own weird form of like self-protection, he tries to crash and burn things. And one of the things that other people immediately pick up on is that he doesn't act that way around his sister. And so there are also other jokes where they point out that he must be some kind of weird ciscon, because the
funny thing is every single time she is like, it's like when she's during the camping arc, when she's in the bikini and she's like, how do I look? And it's all these like, cheesecake shots, and then he's just like, whatever.
Like,
he's like, whatever, you look fine.
You look like my sister.
But he does point out though, and she accuses of being a ciscon, but he does say, like, if you go out dressed like at the beginning of that the arc where she's trying, says, oh, we're going to Chiba. He's like, you better get dressed though, because if you go out, I'm gonna have to, take my laser pointer and shoot it in everybody's eyes so they can't see you. And she's like, you're a ciscon. And then like a couple episodes later, she's like, how do I look, big brother? And he's like, yeah.
That's part of the joke, right? He has a protective.
He's
big
actually
brother,
he's protective, yeah, but he's actually not a ciscon.
I think the best joke that they did was when Saki's Saki's brother calls him, and she's like, "Oh, big bro." And he's like, "Oh yeah, don't call me that." And he just hangs up on him, like, "I'm not your."
He's like, "Who the F are you to call me Onisan?"
But
hangs up on him.
Anyways, I think we're getting too far.
That actually indicates though that
he's a protective.
That actually indicates that's what he would call Hachiman if he was going out with Komachi.
So that indicates a potential crush on
sort of possibly
the character.
Yeah,
or he's adopting how she calls him.
Yeah. But no,
it's either that or he's
listen, she's trying to slide into Hachiman's sister's DMs, right? And he's trying to get approval from like the older brother before he like slides in.
Yeah, no, it ain't happening. He's like, but no, that's actually I think why he gets so mad, because it's like, this is a friend of my little sister's, and he called me Onisan or whatever. Like, yo, that means like that sounds like you're dating my younger sister. That ain't happening. You ain't calling me Onisan.
It's like if you're dating. It's like if you're dating a chick and you meet her parents and you call her dad yourself, and it's like, no.
Kind of like, yeah, exactly.
Anyway, getting back to Yahari, Full, do you want to kick us off with spoilers? Because the thing with Yahari, right, is that like on the surface everything looks normal, but when you get in depth to it, the show is actually very complicated, and that's what I actually like about the show. It's very in-depth.
We're gonna go into spoiler territory from here on out. So if you're listening, and you haven't seen, we're gonna probably deal with spoilers of season 2 and 3 as well. So a few. So let's start really digging into some of these characters. Right now that we've broken that seal, let's start really digging into these characters. Starting, let's start, I guess, with Yuigahama Yui.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I was going to start with Hachiman, but
well, okay. Then you know what? Start with Hachiman.
Well, it kind of works in both ways again, because it's like if you're talking about that again, the I hate nice girls. Hachiman, like that's the part where you start to realize possibly that Hachiman Hikigai is a unreliable narrator, because even from then on, as time progresses, you start to realize he's lying to himself about the reality. When they go on the summer festival, when it's just him and her, like the fireworks festival.
Yes. There's that.
When it's just him and
her.
On
their way back,
he's making.
He there's a moment where he feels like she's going to ask him out, and he directly tries to like move away from.
He tries to. The phone rings.
The phone rings, and she's going to ignore it, and he uses that opportunity because he's too afraid. And that's the thing. He's so afraid of being, and even before then, like from the very beginning, she tries to work herself up to, and this is the thing, me and Full had this conversation, because I guess the thing that I told Full is, if she was asking him to the fireworks as just a friend, she would never have had to work herself up to ask the question, because she would have never considered it being anything more than just friends going to see fireworks. That is the first obvious sign, and from then it builds on.
Yeah, and that's why
I mean, at the start of it too, there's an interesting line by him where he sits there. It's like, in situations like this, in the past, I used to get the inclination that maybe someone wants to be more than just friends, and now that I'm mature and an adult, I've come to understand the true reality of why would anyone ever, and I'm just like,
there's also when she when the subway has this little shake and she ends up getting knocked off balance and leaning towards him. He tells himself, he's like, once upon a time I would have, like, people think, oh man, maybe this is fate, and they read into it. He's like, but no, this is just a happenstance. It means nothing. And the thing is, he's basically ignoring all the signs.
But can you blame him?
No.
Like,
well, that's the thing.
Can you blame him?
No, after his experiences that he's had in the past, no. Who he is and why he is the way he is makes perfect sense. Now, does that mean that he's right? No.
And I think that's the important thing. Like, and that's where it's interesting in this first season, because through the second and third seasons, he's basically forced to confront not only the truth of what's going around him. He's forced to confront the truth of the feelings of others, but also the truth of his own feelings.
Because what I think is interesting, right, is that you think that, like, on the surface, right, that these two women that has is like Yuri and Yukiko, and if I'm slurring, it's because I've had I've been drinking a fuck ton of vodka in the background.
I've had a lot of beer, so let's continue.
Yeah, if I'm slurring,
I've still got half my whiskey.
Like, at the beginning, right, you think it's completely like non-romantic and shit like that, but as the series goes on, and this is even like in season 1, you see like hints of this, because it's like we're talking before, like, why would Yuri care? Not Yuri or Yui.
Yui.
Yeah, Yui. Why would she care what Hachiman thinks she looks like, and then Hachiman unconsciously kicks game? Or if, like, Yuriko, of how she's, like, slowly opening up to Hachiman. It's what I like about the show and about the relationship, like, it's very subtle at first, but, like, if you, like, kind of timestamp it, like, compared to, say, second season or third season, like, they're a lot more open with him than they were in the first season, and in the first season, you see a lot of these, so, Honne, or whichever one's the first one, the mask, right, slipping away.
Tatemai.
And Tatamai, and that's what I like about the show, is that it actually eases you into it. Like, it doesn't just like suddenly pop on you. Like, during my rewatch, I kind of noticed it's just like, wow, Yuriko's being a lot less harsh to Hachiman than she used to be. And in the third season, like, most of that stuff is gone, because with Yuriko,
there's a key part with Yukino where she is teasing him during the school festival while he's in the orchestral pit, kind of like trying to guide the speeches and stuff, right, and tell people, like, give them hand signals if, like, time's running out and shit like that. And so she says, "I don't see you, you're so unnoticeable." And then he says something, and then, because she got a rise out of him, we see something that we haven't seen before. We see her smile.
Very light smile. Well, we've seen her do light smiles, but this one was different. It was a light smile in regards to him.
In regards to his response, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing you must know about Yuriko is that aside from, like, her family shit, like, that chick, she has a tongue as sharp as steel, right?
Well, yes. And that's a lot of that is defensive. I mean, that's the thing, is she's got a lot to get over. But, like, when it comes to, like, the funny thing is, like, when it comes to, I say, like, can you blame people? Can you blame him, right? One of the things I've been telling my friend, talking about my friends, one of my friends once, long ago, he said, the problem with women is they flirt. Just stop. Stop. When they flirt and they're not interested, they're just having fun, it's indistinguishable from when they really are interested. And they might think the signals they're sending you are different, but they're really not. And as much as guys can be stupid when it comes to shit, like, you could sit there and you could say, holy shit, Hachiman is fucking dumb as hell. He's really screwing this up. Like, she's throwing it at him. And it's like, at the same time, it's like, actually, his behavior makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
because not just from his own experiences, but because just as much as guys are dumb, like one of the things that you never see anybody talk about is girls are dumb. Girls are dumb as much as guys.
Yeah,
and she's like, I'm throwing all these signals at you. It's just like, look, you really seriously need to drop the handkerchief hardcore and not just make it, and that's what she says she's going to do eventually. She says, I'm going to get tired of waiting. During the cultural festival,
Yui
she's sitting next to him.
yeah,
Yui says, I'm going to get tired of waiting and I'm going to make a real move. Right? So she makes it clear that she's...
The thing I have to mention is that, men are more, broad-minded scale, while women are more detail-orientated. So, there's that thing as well. But the other thing of Yuriko is, right, is that, her insulting Hachiman, you could also count that as, a shit test. Part of the shit she is doing is a shit test.
Well, here's something that I observed, right? When there's a point in the show, and I think it's after and I can't remember which episode it is. It is after, it's after some of the planning of the club meeting, right? It's after she's sick, after they go to check on her, and then the next day where he talks about the first time they talk about the name of the festival. And he makes her laugh because he basically, points out what's really going on.
Yes. If you really look at the situation, only one of us is doing work.
And he's like, I'm the one doing it. Everyone's being, which we could get into that as well for Hachiman, how he throws himself under the bus.
We need to.
But see, that was one of the funniest things too, because because the reality is that she was doing most of the work.
Of course,
just a few individuals other than him inside the student council, but he was just it was the most he was taking bullets.
Yes. Now the thing is, after that conversation, it starts off, they're kind of talking about what he did, and suddenly gears shift to they're discussing about whether they're okay or not. And the first time, actually, I think it was just on this viewing, and I had to rewind it to make sure. I finally actually caught it. It's like, oh wait, this is one of those between the lines conversations. They speak around the issue, which again, if we want to talk about things about Japanese culture, this happens
they will talk around it.
It's what is not being said is just important, and we'll get into that when we talk about Yuriko's sister, who I consider a typical spider.
But the thing is, after that moment, when Yukino knows they are okay, that's when she resumes her teasing, but it takes on a very different tone, partially because it's less, accusatory, it's less tearing him down. If anything, it's basically making a joke about how he tries to be invisible by treating him as being invisible. And that's what makes her smile, is, he's sitting there like, I'm down here in the pit, and she's like, oh, what is that? I can't see you. Your presence is so not present that I can't even see you. And that's where you can tell she's warming up to him, or at least she's allowing herself to warm up to him.
There's a scene right at the end of season. Oh man, the tab on my soda just fell into the soda can.
Oh well.
The scene at the very end of season 1, he's about to say, it's kind of odd what he's about
to
say.
Friend, which is like the same thing he says the
first episode,
second episode, end of the first episode, yeah.
And he gets a different response than the first time, but it's very obvious that they're both playing off their original first conversation.
You're right. I only thought about the fact that he offered the question again, but I didn't think about her response being different or how different it was. That's a good point. But I guess before discussing Yukino and therefore her sister, back to Hachiman and son of a gun, I already forgot what I said I was going to go back to regarding
Hachiman,
him.
At least for a lot of people, is a very relatable.
Oh no, definitely. I mean, I can't lie. I'm not going to lie and say I don't understand the nice girl's speech. I don't understand some of what he's, and when he does a lot of his flashbacks that are embarrassing, I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, I had this moment. I had this exact same moment. Even something as simple as the flashback where they're like, oh, it's really hot today, and he's like, oh, it's more humid than anything, and the two girls are just immediately like, oh, okay, and you see him at home that night just like, ah.
That's the other funny thing, because that's such an innocuous statement, but he's still agonized over it.
Exactly. Well, it's not only just that he agonized over it, it's that it made anyone uncomfortable. But it's like, I understand. I understand that. And I think that's also what makes Hachiman probably work broadly, because again, he himself is not an otaku character, which is what a lot of these shows or light novels or manga rely on. But he's got that background that
I mean,
so many guys could relate to.
Reference to Scryad.
Scryad?
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen it.
Where, like, the teacher says, like, I'm about to think of you on my annihilating second bullet or something like that.
His teacher is like, the way they describe her is she is basically kind of like an otaku. She makes tons and tons of like old manga references, and he
really
like
said this show has no waifus. I mean, come on, man.
No. So a lot of her metaphors that she gives is to that. Well, so that was the one of the things is that a lot.
Can you just say the quiet part out loud again?
Is that
vengeance? I will sack your whole.
Is that
I don't know, man. I can't decide between
plot. Sorry, rewind again and go.
Right, go ahead. Yeah.
So. One of the running gags in the series is, of course, that he calls his teacher old. Yeah. And that gets her mad, and then she punches him. And she also even names her punch after something from an old anime.
I didn't know that.
But she makes the light novel translators have little star references to what it's referring to. But
what notes you mean?
Yeah. But some of the common reoccurring gags in his interaction with her is that she'll make a reference to an anime, and he'll say that you're really showing your age citing such an old ass anime, and then it'll provoke her or she'll get upset because she's like, it's not that old, and so that's like one of the common interactions is that his teacher quotes and cites a bunch of just old anime all the time.
And this is something that unfortunately had to get dropped in the adaptation because you don't really get that angle of her.
Whereas
I would argue you get a little bit but it's trimmed down a lot compared to the light novel.
And then the other things is like Hachiman and Yuki Noshita is that they actually both reference like classic literature quite often when they talk to each other. And that actually is kind of like one of the overlying things of like part of why they get along so well is that they're both like avid readers. So to go into like the kind of things that you learn about like the setting of the book is that the school he is going to is actually a pretty
prestigious school.
Yeah, it's a pretty prestigious school. I know in season 2 he meets one of his old classmates, and this isn't a real spoiler, and they comment on they're like, wow, I didn't realize you were so smart to go to such a nice school. And that's part of that is that he ends up going to a nice school, and he's actually, I think, 3rd or 4th in his class for literature and writing.
Damn, really?
Yeah, so he's behind Hayama and Yukino. So those are like the only 2 people but he's also like barely passing math. But
I can relate to that too.
I can relate.
So like he's and they also make jokes about how Yui they question all the time, how did you get into this school? Because she's like
I have seen kind of those
like
jokes.
A Gairu character, but they're not exactly the normalist of normal high school students, because he actually is, and that's kind of the interesting thing is he's actually a high achieving person.
It actually makes
all things considered.
It actually makes sense too in a lot of ways, because I mean, why would just an average high schooler be going to the same school as someone like Yukino?
Considering her background and
some of the other characters,
like her being in a school like this makes a lot of sense.
If
it's a high level one,
like both Hayama and Yukino are like top of their class, whereas he's only like top of class in like
they're also high on the social ladder too. That's part of it. And that's where it's like when you consider people that are that high on the social ladder, why would they just go to an average high school? They would be at a fancier high school. And that's actually something we didn't even touch on when it came to schools is where you go.
This is that like in Japan, like especially when it comes to high school and colleges, like the really prestigious ones, like like for example, we're doing like universities, right? Like Tokyo University, Osaka, that type of shit. If you go to one of those schools, that shit opens up a lot of fucking doors to you, like like politicians and corporate CEOs. Those are people that go to those fucking schools.
Well, that's the funny thing is, again, it's like if you look at it from, especially where me, Plot, and Full are all American. I'm trying to think if there are any like real high schools that get national recognition for academics rather than, you know,
I don't know about like national recommendations, but like I know of a few individual schools in my state that are more well received.
Yeah, I mean, usually though we've got a couple of high schools, like, but they're all private schools, or I forget what the Commonwealth
schools.
But then you'll have Japanese schools. You'll have Japanese schools that have the reputation of like colleges.
Like, so imagine, right, that I went to like say Japan, right, and I took a course or two at Tokyo University, and say someone sees that like a potential employer in Japan, or even say like United States sees like, oh, I've got a diploma or something from Tokyo University. Like say I end up in Japan, right, and I take a small class or something, right, and they see like, oh, I went to Tokyo University, or that's quite a prestigious school. Okay, clearly the
that happens in America too. That happens in America, but it's like that's the thing where what I'm getting at is
college.
It also happens in high school. Like, well, okay, yeah. For colleges, it happens in America, but nobody really cares about what high school you went to. In Japan, though, where you might not even go to university,
Japan,
what high school you go to will matter.
As well.
To an extent. Not too much so in America. Like it's a small factor sometimes in what college you can get into, but not like
it's a much bigger deal in Japan.
I mean, ironically, the one school that rejected me was a party school, or one that had the reputation of that.
Who was that?
It was your grad school. They rejected me for undergrad.
Are you serious? Are you serious? Wow.
Two tech schools that are pretty well known both accepted me. And of course I went to the one. So
you went to the one. Yeah, exactly. And wow. Okay. That's
kind of funny, isn't it?
Rejected by my grad school. Wow.
It must have been I wasn't a party goer or something.
Yeah.
To go back
to be honest, you would have hated it there, but
I probably would have.
It's a relative full shit. Ban them quickly.
But but no, to rewind back though, like if we want to talk a bit more, well, we've talked a little bit about Hachiman and his relationship with the others, but let's also go into just the first episode. Let's dig into Yui Uegahama and what makes her interesting, and also like what we were talking about earlier. About Yui and the obligation and the giri and everything. Yui technically already fulfilled her giri. Now, granted, Hachiman doesn't know about this. Well, he found out technically already. By the time he has his nice girl speech, he already found out because his sister admits to...
Yeah.
Wait, did his sister admit to eating all the chocolates before?
His sister admitted to eating all the chocolates.
Eating all the chocolates. So he already received his giddy chocolate, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that counts, though, because, I mean, he got hit by a car.
And
the giddy that was really paid out was Yuki Noshita's family paying out for his medical bills. That's what I mean.
That's what I mean.
That's
like, Yukino acted as if she'd never seen him before, had no clue who he was. Yui, on the other
creepy
hand,
thing.
Genuinely,
well, that was kind of part of the thing of that they kind of noticed that it's.
If you go back and watch that first episode, knowing that she was in the car when he got hit, and all of a sudden he gets brought into this room. He gets brought into this room and joins your club that the teacher said, and all of a sudden, like you act like you have no clue who the hell this guy is. That to me actually is kind of creepy. And in fact, is
she not protecting herself just like he protects himself?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like I went back and watched that episode again, and I'm like, there is no evidence that she knows who he is. Like, none.
Yeah, let's rewind this and back. Considering her family, what does it mean to owe a favor to someone? Maybe that's one of the reasons she was scared.
That gets into the season 3 stuff where like that he actually uses that as blackmail material, but that's
I remember that.
Not against her.
Yeah.
Actually,
but that's the thing.
And actually, he uses that to help her.
Yeah,
that's just the funny part.
That was because he makes the smoking. He makes the point in season 3 that he's the only one who can actually have this kind of leverage in the world at this point for that conversation, and it's like, and he's right.
Sorry, I just want to make sure to get back on track because what I wanted to say, like, what's interesting about the first interaction between Hachiman, Yukino, and Yui all together, and Yui coming in with her request. immediately you have two separate philosophies between him and her, and what it is he does not believe you can change, or you ought to change, because you can't change the world. Why compromise yourself? And this is of course his philosophy for being an outcast, for making the decisions so society doesn't make it for him. Yukino, on the other hand, believes in the ability to change, and of course, why would she? Because we'll find out more later, but a lot of her life has been laid out for her, and she wants to change it. So when Yui comes in, Yui's an interesting fusion, because again, like, if you want to sum up Hachiman, it's accepting things as they are.
Right, is that like in Fvlon in the series, right? You see this weird like triangle forming, and it's almost like the three of them are meant to be like together, not in like a romantic way, but like there's something about the three of them together that make them as a whole shine. And Yuri is
because she really is the glue, because he's about acceptance of how things are. Don't bother trying to change. Yukino is about trying to change and better yourself, or at least try and better the world. And then you have Yui in the middle, who she accepts Hachiman, and yet she wants to change herself. So she's an interesting combination of the philosophies, what you can accept and then what you can change. And this is something it took me again until this viewing to realize, because even though Full and I watched the show together twice at the same time, I've watched it now 3 times fully together. And through this realization, because you always wonder, well, what does Yui offer? Because she's always down on herself. But the thing is, she is that sort of mixture of the philosophies that's able to help them find something in the middle. And of course, interact with other people, because she's sociable. She's cute. She comes off as nice and everything. Hello. All that stuff.
Originally when I first watched the show, that's just what I called her, the hello girl, and then like rewatching it and stuff like that, I'm like, wow, there's actually so much more to her than hello.
It really is. And it's funny because you really don't get it on the first viewing. It's why a lot of stuff in the later seasons does suddenly come off as like, oh, wow, like I didn't see this in her character. But that's partially, again, Tatemai and Honne. And her Tatemai is in a lot of ways that nice girl, but part of it's because she's also trying to figure herself out. And that's why when we see her meet Yukino and Hachiman, we have this girl that doesn't seem particularly smart compared to them. She doesn't seem particularly deep, and yet she respects these two because they're individuals in a lot of ways. When you think about it, she, when Yukino tells her, it's like basically gives her criticism, she appreciates it because she's not being torn down. She's being given constructive feedback, constructive criticism, ways in which she can improve herself. And that's why she finds people like Yukino and Hachiman admirable, and partially because, again, she already saw Hachiman as actually a guy with a good heart because he was willing to take a hit from a car to save a dog. And Yukino, again, it's not just that she walks around looking cool, it's that she's willing to speak her mind, but she's not doing it maliciously. And we see what happens when she's malicious, because that's how she is to Yumino.
Yumiko.
The trapdoor spider.
No, not her. The Yumiko.
The blonde one.
The alpha bitch. And I think Ramble's
got a tongue as sharp as steel, because holy shit, can that girl like?
Well, where did she learn it from?
Yeah,
I mean that's the thing.
I do have to say, like, when it comes to her sister, I don't know.
Fucking spider,
I mean, that's the thing. People talk. They talk they almost portray her as like this malevolent figure, but she's interesting because she's not. It only comes off that because she's not really. No,
I'm wondering about this now because I wasn't sure. Well, hold on. I wasn't sure if I wanted to ask this, but me and Full have some theories about how to know. And one of the things that I'm wondering is, well, actually, no, we already know. We do find out about how to know
is she
in a relationship with another character.
Yeah, but is she fucking evil because she's bored? Is one of the things I'm wondering.
No.
Is she fucking?
But she is a trapdoor fucking spider.
Dude, she's fucking evil.
Hold on.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm going to say, like, I'm curious if Plot's got information from the light novels that isn't in the show.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd say that I do, but really, from the way it always felt, it's not that she necessarily is malevolent. It's more like she kind of can't stand, in a similar-ish way that Hachiman is, that is people just leaving things unsaid, and but at the same time she wants to cause conflict for her sister, so that her sister is forced to grow.
And see that I thought that at first at certain points. And then as the show went on, and I'm talking season 2 and season 3, I became more and more convinced that she was actually more of a malevolent actor. Because, and not really out of boredom, it seems to me, that she is, because she'll sit there and she'll say, like, under certain circumstances, oh, I love my sister, blah, 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 I love my little sister, this, that, and the other thing, blah, 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 she's so wonderful. And then it's like, actually your behaviors though are that of somebody who's trying to be extremely malicious, for whatever purpose.
I think there's a couple issues here, and I think one of those is Haruno herself, if she were a narrator, would be an unreliable one.
Yes.
Honestly, partially because who she is.
Is what she is.
Well, all right. Well, it's not just that. Again, we're talking about Hone and Tatemai. We're on Hone and Tatemai, and the thing is, does she ever let her mask down? Even like at any point, does she really let it down? I think that's part of the issue with
she can't.
This is part of
her and Hayato. We really should. Spoilers alert! If you really don't want to hear about season things 2 that get hinted at season 2 and 3, stop right the fuck now. Yes. But we really have to address the elephant in the room. Season 2 is full of hints. The show never comes out and says it, but it really heavily implies. And I'm like 90% certain that
since you brought up the 2, I already know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, they are engaged, and it is an arranged marriage. Yes. And if you look everything, if you look at it from a Japanese perspective, everything that you see between Hayato and Haruno in season 2 suggests a number of things. Haruno and Hayato are engaged. They're going to get married. He's going to succeed the company, at least as the head of the company. He's possibly going to take her last name, which would not be abnormal in Japanese society for somebody who's marrying up. And he actually likes Yukino, not Haruno.
That last part is the one that's hard to really gauge.
Yeah. Right? So she's like, okay, what is it between you and Hayato? And she's trying to like alpha bitch your way to Yoko, and Yoko's like, there's nothing between us.
Well, that's the thing is, whether or not
as far as I would, because this is what I always thought, is that there was always kind of this inclination that it was either Haruno or Yukino that he was supposed to be engaged to.
I'm almost positive it's because he has him and there was one scene where him and Haruno show up together, and I forget which one of them says, we're expected to show up to events together.
This implication from what I understand in the show is that to a certain extent, like, Hayato actually does like Haruno, but Haruno is kind of just indifferent as far as I can tell.
And I wonder, because in the first season,
that was mine.
We wondered if he has a crush on Yukino, but it's like in hindsight, because I'm trying to think
both have the same last
because it's a camp. That's part of the issue, and that's one of the issues. Because
there's a scene in season 2
where they flash back to the camp.
There is evidence that in the past, like because Hayato talks about regrets and things that he can't
during
do
the summer
in
camp,
conflict. And that he's jealous that Hachiman can, and that he's glad that he can help Yukino, because it's implied that in the past, when Yukino was being bullied in elementary school, he tried to stop it and failed because he had no idea how.
Yeah,
and
that's the thing.
His people-pleasing mentality couldn't help everyone, and he actually deeply regrets it, and he envies Hachiman for his ability to help in those scenarios.
He envies Hachiman, but he also dislikes it because Hachiman's strategy is always the counter opposite of what he tries, because his is all about his is all about maintaining that harmony. But Hachiman,
hold on. The thing is, go ahead.
Okay, in season 1, Hachiman... Well, see, that's another thing when it comes to Hachiman's arc, right? Because, again, when we go back to when Yukino was sick, that whole council arc, when he goes to visit her, again, like, first episode, you can't change the world, you can't compromise, so why bother changing for it? Just accept how things are. But that episode, though, when he's done visiting her and he's waiting for the elevator and he's having his narration, his decision is, I'm not going to make a compromise. I'm going to force the world to change. And that's what leads to him calling out Sagami. Now, granted, he still falls on his own sword. He maintains Wa in his own way by making him still the outcast.
Yeah,
but
he is the most hated man in school.
He's spelling out.
And if you read the light novel, and maybe it's slightly addressed, he actually has this thing where he talks about cycles and trends, and how he's like, I may be the most hated person in school, but it'll probably only last 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what's hilarious though is
That might be that might not be unholy. Well, not wholly untrue.
Yeah,
but the thing is to keep with my point as far as season 1. That's the thing. Like, he's now convinced to change. Like, so what does he do? He doesn't just
under the bus.
He throws himself under the bus. But when he approaches Sagami, he forces her to deal with herself. He's not forcing himself to change. He's presenting her with the choice to change by basically saying, yeah, you're rotten, you're terrible, you're just like me, you know?
Yeah.
And now she's got a choice. She can either change or she could just keep going with the knowledge that she is rotten herself.
Yeah.
All this stuff brought to her. But that's what the thing is, no matter what happens, Wa's been disrupted. And this is what Hayama hates. Because not only did he just force her to confront this stuff, an outright disruption of Wa, he's now turned himself into the most hated person in school, because what happens after that? Almost everyone is disapproving of his methods, except for the fat otaku guy whose name I forget. He's the only one. He's the only one that's like nodding to him and is like, "Good job!" Like,
what's funny is like after that, I could just imagine watching this in my anime club back in college, and when he drills Sagami and he just goes at her, I could just imagine everybody going, "Oh snap!
Well,
if
you got on YouTube, I remember when this show was like coming out and it was popular, and it was just like it was basically like Sigma male Hachiman.
I hate that meme, but go ahead.
But like it's like Sigma male Hachiman owns bitch or something.
Well, there's a lot of
there's lots of stuff.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like I have no debt. But
the thing about it is, and this is, I was talking with Lone Crit, is that the interesting thing about the show, and then the end of the season, and then small parts of season at the beginning of season 2, is that to a certain extent, the first season kind of wants you to look at Hachiman in like this positive, wow, look at him, so beyond it all kind of mentality, and it's very much trying to appeal to that loner mentality to get you to like him. And it's not really until like the end of season-ish 1 and then beginning of season 2 where it kind of throws his whole mentality under the bus.
Season 2 really does it, I think, at the beginning. Like here, like again, I think they were adapting the light novel, but again, they didn't understand it. So they have him they give him the creepy smile when he's pinned against the wall, but after that they just have him slump. And the beginning of season 2, it feels like they really wanted to readdress that. Like, and that's the thing. I tried to look into reasons why they changed this season. There's nothing but speculation or something, but
you mean the animators?
Sorry, yes, the animators. They wanted to change the studio. They wanted to change the animation, and I can't help but wonder if part of it's because it does feel like the first studio just did not understand what material they had. They did not understand the depth of what they were working with.
The other interesting thing I talked about with Lone Crit is like, if you've read the light novels, you realize that even the directing for this show is much closer to that of like portraying how Hachiman views the world. Like, there's lots of shots like of him
season
like
2 and
looking
3,
at in season 2 and 3 where he like looks at objects while other people are talking, and the camera work for it is the same thing, where you can see where it's basically you taking on his viewpoint, where it's like, here, let me look at this like rock over here, and this is while someone else is talking to him.
Oh, that explains a lot. Oh God.
And it's actually like this is in a certain way part of his like avoidance. It's not like some just like, look at this Sakuga like animation. It's
or lack thereof.
It's him actually
still shot.
Yeah, it's it's him actually like avoiding things, but they don't have that in season 1. It's not.
No, they do. There's a scene where Yui is asking. One stands out in particular. The scene where Yui is asking him to the fireworks, and he's like, "Yeah, I guess if Komachi wants to go, Hiro and I can go with you." And there's a conversation going on, and the camera focuses on a still shot, and of course it pans from one side it pans around a little bit, so it looks like it's animated. It's a little sculpture of a bear grabbing a salmon out of the river, and it focuses on that for a good 10-15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds of the episode, and so it's focused on that, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I'm thinking, what the hell is this? You're zooming in on this is this is not. Why are we looking at this while characters are talking? Except you get to zoom in on this and pan and save animation, right? Because again, it's first season 1. Yeah. I think, what is it? Brains Based. That's who animated it. I was just looking up because I was wondering
if it White Rabbit that does season.
No, Studio Feel does the second and third seasons. I just looked it up because I was wondering if they did Kids on the Slope, because Kids on the Slope had rotoscope animation for stuff too. But that's the thing. Different studio. That's the thing. I do think, you go into season 2, and what you're talking about there. I think there's also awkwardly directed stuff in season 1 where they're trying to do something. Like in the very first, that's what I said. Like in the very first episode, my first notes are about a moment where you see a girl drop her books, and they're trying to make you think Hachiman's going to reach for them, but he doesn't. It's misleading, but the way it's cut and edited looks so awkward. And there's other moments like that throughout the first season where it feels like the directors are trying to be misleading, and then they fail to be, because it's more just confusing for a minute, and you're if it's your first time watching, you might have to rewind to be oh, that's what happened, because it's just not really well framed. It's the way the things move doesn't really lead your eye in a way that's logical. Your brain doesn't stitch it together correctly. Whereas season 2 and 3, I'm just thinking too of just the insane use of rotoscope for a lot of it, because and even just the opening of a can of coffee, the coffee that he likes. The amount of animation put into opening the can,
interesting thing is
blowing on it,
and absolutely loves coffee, specifically a brand called Max Coffee.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking Boss Coffee, but that's an actual real brand.
Well, no, but it might be actually a reference to Boss Coffee. I think it was.
I wouldn't be surprised if it would be, yeah.
Because it's got who's the actor? Boss Coffee. Hold on, let me look that up. Right, I know the actor. Boss Coffee.
Didn't Tommy Lee Jones do an ad for it or something?
Tommy Lee Jones, that's it. Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is on Boss Coffee. That's it. That's the guy. Tommy Lee Jones.
There's two things that he likes to describe about himself, and that's his large amount of knowledge on, I think it's Chiba, the location of Chiba.
Yeah.
He knows so much about its cultural and history. Enough to where it actually creeps out Yui at one point.
Well, what's funny is part of that's probably related to his Chuny phase when he was a kid. Because if you think about his friend and how he's fictionalized himself as this historical character, and how Hachiman's got a similar name to another warlord or something like that. If he was going,
he's got the same name as a guy who's been deified. Hachiman is a war god in Japan.
So if he had those same Chuny fantasies and he dug into the history of Chiba, then that actually makes sense.
Right. And then it's his Max Coffee, and that's another thing though that the light novels actually use to show you him being out of character is him either choosing to get a different kind of drink out of the vending machine, or sometimes it might be that he obsessively thinks about his coffee drink when other people are trying to communicate to him, and it's very much him trying to put his mind somewhere else to avoid conflict.
Maybe I need to read get these light novels and read them like they're a screenplay.
Hachiman with coffee, this picture I'm about to link. You always see Hachiman with a can of coffee in his hand.
The one that Plot you use all the time. Yeah.
That's what I'm using.
You know what I'm realizing? With Bio just posted that screenshot?
here's the funny thing with Hachiman, right? Is that when I see
our listeners going to see this picture?
They're not, but that's what I do want to make this observation, because again, like one of the things I realize is a lot of people like the character designs better in the first season. And looking at this picture, I'm like, well, yeah, because they look more what's expected of a teen romantic comedy anime. Because they play down the anime features more. Like he still looks anime. He doesn't look. It's like when I think of quote unquote realistic looking characters in an anime, I think Akira, Ghost in the Shell, and this isn't it, but it's still closer. It's far closer in terms of proportions and appearance than the first season. So maybe that's one of the reasons where people like the character designs in the first season better, because they're closer to just what anime is, and therefore what people expect out of watching an anime, or maybe of an anime of this kind. But to slightly rewind back, Hachiman. So let's go actually talk about more. Well, do we have more to talk about when it comes to Hachiman and
yeah? So I guess I'll get my closing statement is that, and I kind of agree. It's probably because the first studio didn't understand what they were trying to do. What his character was, but they almost try to portray him in that like too cool for school kind of
see that
style. And that's not really it at all. Is that
it's not really his bag, baby?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when it comes to talks about the show, still view it as that because of how poorly they betrayed it in season 1.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that you can easily find his, I hate nice girl speech, and people, there is that loss of he's wrong though. Yeah, like parts of what he said is what I said before.
Is he?
Hold on.
The show,
parts of what he says are truth.
Yes,
he's saying it about Yui in that moment, and in that moment, he is completely wrong
about Yui.
That's the thing. He's completely wrong in that moment.
Well, is that you get like a lot of Sigma male grind set compilation videos, primarily from the first season, mind you. I
hate this. I hate the Sigma male grind set meme. I really do. I hate it. You're just an alpha male that doesn't pay as much attention to the ladies. That's it. That's all.
Anyway, But and I don't know. I think it's very interesting that so few of the people actually understand his character, and this has gone to like great lengths where like I've seen lots of YouTube videos talking about the show, and it's immediately becomes obvious that a lot of people do not understand the show that they watched. Very well at all.
The only they don't.
I saw was it Alexander something who made a YouTube on it that actually.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Who kind of understood the show that he watched, but I've seen at least like 6 or 7 others, and they don't get it, and it's I find it funny because
it's like the new Evangelion movies, where the latest one came out, and people are like the original series with depression, and the movie is like with therapy and stuff, and it's like not really, especially because you don't get the original series. And that's the thing. Like this, as Full said, and it's honestly really surprising to me. Like this is probably one of my before my teen romantic comedy snafu, the first real favorite anime I had in a long time was Kill la Kill, but mostly because of how it's done rather than the quality of its plot. This one,
fantastic animation.
But this one is the depth of these characters, where you can sit there and you can watch it, and you can stuff that we're contemplating, stuff that one of the things that I also told Fool is, I don't mean text literally, but I don't want to declare or believe anything without enough evidence from the text. But there's enough evidence from the text that we can believe things about the relationship between what is it, Hayato and Hamada?
Or Haruno
and Hayama. We can glean information from that. We can glean information about other things. You can glean information based on what's in there, but it's also because they are just so thoroughly developed and so realistic. Even someone like, again, Kawasaki Saki, who there's not a lot of real info on, you can understand why she is how she is, because things are handled, and that's part of where, again, we didn't even talk about it. The one episode where when they're trying to find out where she works, and that's one of those subversive. Okay, that is a subversive moment where what would your typical comedy relief go is, she's working at the Cat Maid Cafe and her tough exterior is good. Dude, that's what stinking Akihabara Deep does, right? The really tough fighter girl with a lisp works at the maid cafe. Like, that's what you would expect out of something like this. And the one character, the otaku,
and
responds
they go
that
to that
way.
Like, what, cat cafe thing?
Yeah, the maid
it's
cafe.
one of those things that, from what I understand, basically the author was, like, told that they have to include X amount of this crap in a light novel.
God, that one surprised me.
So he just jams it in, buddy.
He just jams it in, makes it misleading, and then it works for the show though, because what it's basically identifying, this is not a stupid fantasy anime world. Oh, okay, I want to say stupid, but this is not an anime fantasy world. This is a grounded anime world where, this turns out to be a minor that lied on her application and is serving alcoholic drinks to adults. That's like what this show is compared to, in some ways, again, what it's sold at. Because what are the moments that they spend a lot of time on animating in the first season? You get a better effect of Fujoshi girl Ebena's nosebleed than you do of anything of actual interest or importance or value in the plot. So it's, I don't know, it's one of those, and of course, I'm sorry, I'm starting to think of all the notes that I took, because I took a lot, and this show, this is why I was like, we can talk about just the first season, because you can even look at, the first moment Yukino starting to trust, Hachiman is when they have the tennis game. And she tells him, she says, he's going to win this game. And him saying, he's going to win this game is also interesting, because if we do, like, what is the conflict we're going to start to hit as the show goes on? She starts to feel insecure that he's solving all of these issues. But even then, in that summer fireworks festival episode, I'm sorry, I'm starting to monologue and dominate, but it's like something I'm realizing, Yui, in that episode where they're walking back, and she's telling, or wait, was it that episode? Yes, it is that episode. She's telling Hachiman he's going to help Yukino one day. And it's funny because it's going to turn out to be sooner than expected. But then one of the interesting things is he says she would not need help. He doesn't believe Yukino would need help, nor does he think she would actually ask for it. I'm trying to really... This was this episode, right? No. This is a different, earlier episode. Sorry, I got a paper.
I just love like shifting through notes. Like, you just have this giant, like, holy bible of notes of the first season.
Paper ASMR. Back when my buddy Steve and I did a podcast on we did one podcast per prequel movie, and I had notes. Yes, she'd never be in trouble or need help. I wouldn't butt in. That's what Hachiman says. He says Yukino would never be in trouble, nor would she need help. And yet... Oh, yeah,
no, there's a part of his characters, especially in the early, I think it's like first 6 books of the light novel, he's very much deified Yukino,
which makes sense. Why then? So, especially because again, in that tennis match, she says she does not lie, right? Yeah. And then what does he find out?
I think there's I think it's the end of one of the episodes that he says, and that's when I realized even Yukino lies. Yeah,
and he's starting to. He let down his guard for a minute, and now he's hurt because he put this girl on a pedestal.
Yes, and that's. I mean, actually, the interesting things is that as much as the show doesn't do a great job of showcasing it in the seasons, the title cards at the end of every season actually kind of do give you a good example of either what you're going to see the next episode or like what happened at the end of that episode that the author is really trying to impart.
Interesting.
So like there's ones where it's like and once again he goes back from which he came.
Yes.
Like him regressing.
That's after I think he has his nice girl speech. Yeah, I believe that's what it is.
And so there's lots of kind of odd title cards like that draw on like the impactful thing of what that character's actually experiencing that you don't really get showcased properly in season 1. And so you've got like even Yukino lies. You've got probably just look it up, but
there's one that's like and therefore he and she's youth romantic comedy is wrong as they expected or something like that. There's a few that are like that. Yeah, the funny thing is I never really thought of I always thought of it as sort of like not just the episode title but like the summary of how it ends, but not necessarily the idea of what the next episode is going to be.
Or kind of showcase. It's more of like it showcases the results and that you'll probably see in the next episode.
Okay.
So like you don't see how he's going back from where he came, how he's losing the progress that he was making until you see how he's interacting with people the next episode.
Yeah, making sure he.
I guess that's what I mean by that. But
no, it's this is like one of my favorite shows, and it's funny because it's like a Trojan horse, and that's what I love about it. Is you don't expect it to be this smart and this good, but again, that's the thing. Like when people talk about like I'd love to see what the second 2 seasons would be like if done by the first studio. I can't imagine it being done. It would still be good, but I don't think it would be as good.
To a certain extent, I feel like season 2 and 3, like they try to play up the melodrama a bit too high, especially like with the background music.
You see that.
But other than that, like the
animation. Can you see the first studio doing the incredible hand animations?
No.
Oh my goodness, I love that one guy. Which is I loved it. No, like even like both in the light novel and in the book, like that's one of those things that like got spot on in the show, the light novel that was also in like the books. And that I think in the books Hachiman describes him as like some guy who must be the son of a like decent business person who's taken like one class or like read a book on how to be a good leader and is just like trying to throw as many things against a wall to see what sticks.
It's also funny too because there is a point where Hachiman in the first season is saying words like outsourcing, you know, it's like he throws like 3 English words out to mean the same thing, and it sounds impressive, and it's like he's going to run into this himself later on because that's all he's going to have to deal with.
Well, and that was the fantastic thing is that like, you know, season 2, and now they're getting to spoil the season 2. It's like he comes back into that meeting and he like nonchalantly just starts using the same buzzwords that the other guy does to confuse him. And it's just like he hurt himself in confusion. But he's not used to working in groups or like leading things, and that's I don't know, like the interactions like that are probably some of the best moments in the series where it's like you get to see like, you know, I think in the light novels, the head of the student council, you know, as she's leaving the school because she's graduating, and they get that other girl, what's her name? I don't know. Is that she was saying that she
Roja's the younger girl's name.
Second season. Okay.
Yeah, the head of the student council had really hoped that Yukino would have become president and that he would become vice president.
Well, isn't that part of?
We're actually jumping ahead.
Jumping way ahead. Yeah.
Guys, like I do have shit to do as well, so like unless you want to talk about like the best girl season 1, which is Tosaka, I think we should probably wrap it up for now.
Tosaka doesn't have much interactions in the
what?
Which one was Tosaka?
That's the guy.
Tosaka Sakura. He's the dude. That Hachiman is like, oh, is it a girl? And even like Komachi is surprised by that.
Yeah.
Like he's like, I'm a boy.
Like, look, it's the teacher.
Your series has problems. I'm joking.
It's the teacher. I've got a bad. I got a teacher.
Dude, what is it with the teachers, man? I mean, like this series and like K-On!, like the teacher's like best girl in both series.
Hey, whatever gets the motor revving, okay?
Either way, I guess anybody else have a final?
Oh, I mean, we could probably keep talking, but like,
everything's got to be wrapped up at a point.
Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff, like, I really feel like very much season 1 is like a setting up.
It is. It really sets up because like
if you guys want, we like, how about this for the next time we do this cast, because we might do like a part 2. We'll cover season 2 and season 3. So because like really, season 1 really does good. Like that's the good thing about season 1 is it sets everything up, and I think next time we do this, like say next month.
Well, so what I was gonna say is, and this is what I covered with Lone Crate, is that I could say one good thing about like Hachiman's character being portrayed as like a too cool for school, almost like badass betrayal character is that, you know, if you're young and youthful, you might sit there and you're like, yeah, fuck these normies.
Yeah,
And then you get to
love it.
season 2, and it just drops you on your head because it just basically will be like.
I honestly think that that's probably more of a Western viewpoint on the show.
Oh, I know,
on
but
season
that's
one.
one of those things that in hindsight, I kind of like about the show, and that's that. Yeah, you're right. That is probably more of a Western view, but it does a good job of like, to a certain extent, it kind of throws you under the bus in season 2 because you are just you go from like, if that's why you like the show, it basically straight up insults you in season 2 for actually idolizing him in this.
Yeah. Because I'll kind of agree with that. So
I fully will. Yeah, I mean, the beginning of season 2 feels like a statement that it's like we're a different studio.
Yeah,
and
we're not going to handle this the same way. And yeah,
oh boy.
Bio, any thoughts you have before you want to close us off?
Yeah, I think Yahari is a very good show. It's very in-depth. The books are very in-depth. And if you want, like, a high school show that goes really deep into character psychology and some of the things about Japanese society, I think this is one of those shows that, like, if you want to understand why in anime certain characters do certain things, this show does a very good idea of understanding why that is. As we talked about, like, Wa and Hatanai and
sort of,
and all that shit.
Yeah.
And before we, I think my final thoughts is that season 1 does a really good job of setting shit up. It really does a good job of setting it up.
Yeah.
Now we are going to return back to the show next time we come back to Yahari, we are going to be doing season 2 and season 3 together because honestly, if we break it up into 3
hopefully
videos,
we can get Lone Crit.
Yeah, because I also want to get my buddy Lone Crit involved. So before we'll end this off now.
We'll probably record it during the summer.
Yeah, recording the summer.
Yeah,
like season 1 is pretty decent. I think I gave the show like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. Like as far as like school comedies go, this is fairly good.
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I gave season 1 an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. And Hatsune is a character that I think a lot of people can relate to, whether you like it or not. And he does reflect certain. And as my buddy from the pond says, he does sort of reflect certain worries and concerns that everyone in Japanese high school has concerns about.
I guess from my perspective, it's not even just about like wanting if you just want a good show where the characters feel real and actually. The thing, it's not like other high school romantic comedies. Like if you want something simple, that's just what it says on the tin, then watch Gamers or something, because that's exactly what it says on the tin. If you want something with actual depth, then this is the show to watch, but be ready for actual depth.
This is supposed to like one of those, especially season 2, where you'll get to it and you'll finish and you're like, I think I need to go lay down and think.
Yeah, like,
I need to go
because I mean, there's
we're kind of hinting it during this video, but like season 2 and season 3 compared to season 1 of the show, you're like, holy fuck!
And I think you have to discuss them together. I don't think.
Yeah, it might be better to discuss 2 and 3 together.
Yeah, season 1 is like the beginning of an arc. Season 2 and 3 is like the middle and the end of the arc, and we really need to put those things together.
And it's very much there's part of the reason that depth that's there is part of the reason why, like even the light novels I think that they've won tons and tons of awards in Japan.
Yeah.
Relative, and when you like look at like the landscape of light novels that they fall into, it's completely different genre than all the other ones that it exists, like that it's competing with.
Yeah, like,
honestly, because it doesn't feel
high schools you did like a couple of weeks ago, because that was funny.
Well, it's also, it doesn't feel like this is wish fulfillment fantasy, and that's what
that's the thing. It's not even close.
Yeah,
that's what a lot of stuff ends up feeling like.
Peculiar buck from the tennis club, but it doesn't go. Other than that, nothing else.
All right, I guess that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I'm basically done.
Yeah, I mean, we could. There is a lot more. I think there's a lot more to say, but honestly, we'll be more. We'll be probably. I mean, we could really break down like the
these notes,
especially. Well, yeah, you have a ton of notes, and it's like
no, it's fine. It's fine.
No. We could go into like real detail with like say the camping trip arc. But, like, honestly, we've covered most of the really salient points, I think.
Yeah,
major
points,
yeah.
Season 3 and season 2 and season 3. So, I'm going to wrap up this video. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see these gentlemen, and possibly Lone Crit, next time we do this recording, because